Great. Hi, this is Manny Chopra here, and I'm with Robert Darrow from Amdas Development Consultancy. Welcome, Robert.
Hi, Manny.
How are you doing?
Yeah, very well, thank you.
Right. So I'm lucky to have Robert with me here, and Robert is a managing director and founder of Amdas. So, Robert, do you want to give us a brief introduction about what Amdas Consultancy is all about?
Sure. We founded 4 years ago, and I'm used to having worked in investment development funds and for big FTSE 100s, and I felt I wanted to set out a development consultancy and try and provide niche services delivered by the owners and the senior team to SME developers in the hope that we'll work with some who will grow alongside us and develop great schemes. We only do the living sector, so that's residential, hotel, student, mixed use, senior care, privately owned, and yeah, you always get the actual owners working in your schemes, which I think's very rare.
Oh, brilliant. Thanks for the intro. Now, before this, you said you work for a fund. So what exactly did you do?
So I was one of the investment directors working in Central Eastern Europe, doing acquisitions, joint ventures for a couple of years. We were buying co-shares of residential-led schemes, whether they be regeneration or resort schemes in Montenegro, Croatia. We developed on a site in Wilanów in South Poland. So we did about £1 billion of pipeline over a couple of years. And then unfortunately, the last big recession hit, and we decided we'd wind the fund down.
Oh, wow. So is that mainly doing construction projects in these areas, the resorts and the hotels and what have you?
Yeah. I mean, they're all development projects. We were effectively development manager for a Jersey-based equity fund, and we were a co-investor as well.
Brilliant. Sounds like a really exciting experience that you've got there. So really, today's talk was really more about the SME developer, because that's where I'm in the SME development space. So having worked with yourself on a pre-feasibilities on a large scheme, which was potentially going to be a co-living stroke co-working project pre-COVID now, we're hopefully trying to secure that project still. But what is your sort of remit within the SME space? How can you help us, right from feasibility through to construction management and thereon? So how can you get involved at various stages with us?
Sure. Well, our service runs straight from acquisition and site finding and due diligence. We'll run right through, manage your design team, manage your cost, manage your business plans. And we very much tailor it to suit the developer, where, depending on their in-house resource and their experience, we'll sort of fit. So we see ourselves as an outsourced but in-house team. We hope that the developer sees us as part of their team rather than another consultant.
Yeah.
I guess we'll project manage the scheme, we'll procure the builder, we'll do construction management on some smaller schemes if they're using modular companies, and then we'll close out the project, and then we've got an aftercare solution if it's a residential scheme.
Right. So let's go through these. That was interesting. So in terms of site finding and acquisition, what sort of things do you do? So I come to you as a developer and say, I'm looking for schemes up to, 1.5 million to buy and then build. Would you actually go out there and meet agents and speak to them, or to direct?
No, I think our skill is to sit alongside the developer. I think developers in the SME space are very good at finding schemes. That's their USP. I think where we can help them is to either scale up and do the next scheme that's larger and perhaps out of their comfort zone, or we'll work alongside them and give them more bandwidth to do multiple small schemes. Otherwise, SME developers often get trapped doing one scheme and then another scheme and then another scheme, which, is hard work to make a good return on. So I hope what we'll do is, when a developer finds a site, we'll work alongside them to give them cost advice. We'll do their financial appraisals. We'll support them with technical due diligence. We'll help them through town planning. will appoint the right design team at the right price, and will basically act as their right-hand person through that process.
Very
Obviously,
interesting.
all of the time we get offered sites, but they tend to be, of a slightly larger size. And, if any of those seem appropriate for developers, we know, but we'll talk to developers. But, I think we see ourselves very much as a consultant assisting developers.
I think that's very interesting, actually. And, I can talk about growing pains that we are going through right now. And we're very much what you've just said. We're doing one project and then another one. And it would be good to be able to afford someone like yourself. But like you said, you'll almost pay for yourself, if not more, right? Because what we do is if we manage to do 2 or 3 schemes a year, we might be able to double that if using someone like yourself.
I think all SME developers hit a point where you can only work so many hours in a week, and you can only put the brain power into X hours a week. And I think developers should, at some point, once they've felt they've learned enough of how it happens, actually focus on what their skill is, which is negotiations, relationship with land sellers, land buyers, agents, town planning teams, and actually continue to build their pipeline and worry less about the execution of it, and look to build relationships with small SME consultants like ourselves who can actually provide you that bandwidth. And through having a trusted relationship, hopefully we're not like other consultants who kind of dip in, dip out and disappear, and you feel like you're paying for something that isn't really adding value. We hope we can trim our fees to accommodate most developers. Obviously, there's a certain price point where it's just not cost effective for anyone to be involved. But
Yeah, absolutely.
I think generally we've done some small schemes. We've done a 9 apartment permitted development scheme for a friend because they wanted to grow bandwidth. Exactly that scenario. They wanted to be doing 5 of those at one time, and they couldn't manage 5 of them. So
no, I mean, absolutely. That it's spot on, because when I was I wasn't managing myself, although I had a QS involved and the bank had their own monitoring surveyor. I wouldn't have done that, obviously, with little or no experience prior to my Reading project for the 8 apartments that we built back a couple of years ago. I wouldn't be able to do it without my quantity surveyor, to be honest with you, and all the contract administration that he did for us. So if I'm doing 2 or 3 of those at one point in time, there is absolutely no way I can do that on my own.
And I think it's always an interesting discussion with SME developers whether they feel value can be brought by having a project management company. I think lots of SME developers have to use an employer's agent because the bank lender insists on it.
Yeah.
And that's often a very cheap fee to pay for, because literally it's a kind of a legal protection fee to administer the contract for the benefit of the builder and the bank. It's not really a benefit for the developer per se, it's insisted on by the bank. I think project management provides that management input that developers often need to give them ideas and to chat about options. And ultimately it's always the developer's decision. But I think what we do is provide a different perspective and challenge some of the ideas an SME might have, which means that hopefully they're making more informed decisions through the process. And obviously they can make more decisions and implement more because they've got a bigger team now growing.
Yeah, that's interesting. Another interesting question I thought about when you were talking about the various stages you can get involved with, you talked about modular construction, and you can do construction. So have you delivered any, or not you, but have you been working on any schemes that have completed so far, modular schemes?
Yeah, I mean, when I was at Land Securities, one of the biggest FTSEs in the UK for property, we developed modular bathrooms, which were as big as a volumetric student room. So a lot of people, when I say modular bathrooms, they think of very small pods made out of GRC. These were actually kind of super luxe bathrooms, 4 or 5 meters square. So we did that. That was 300 units, all complete within apartments. Last year, we did a student housing scheme, which was 100 beds. And there we worked alongside a developer who wanted to employ a modular company to deliver the bedrooms. but they didn't want a main contractor because they didn't feel a main contractor was going to add the value when 80% of the cost was the volumetric work.
Offsite,
So
yeah.
we acted as project manager for them, and then we also undertook construction management. I would call it light, because we were doing substructure, building control, incoming utilities, superstructure, roof, facade, landscaping, and managing the design team. And the developer was focusing on the modular elements and delivery and execution of those elements. And I think it worked well. The developer got transparency of cost, because obviously on construction management, Amdas are acting very much as an advisor, and the developer is placing each subcontract directly. So it's a direct relationship between developers and suppliers, which lots of SME developers like to have, because they always feel there's a cheaper way to do it, or a main contractor is adding on margins and stuff. So I think that's an interesting area we want to keep exploring. It's an extension of project management. We would never do a large construction management of a traditional build. You know, that's not our skill set. Our skill set is development consultancy, but we know a lot about offsite and the pitfalls and the opportunities.
That's interesting. So going back to offsite then, are you mainly doing volumetric, or you can also do smaller schemes?
Oh no, I mean, offsite encompasses, people always think of offsite as volumetric. For me, volumetric is one of the hardest things to make stack up financially at the moment. I'm a big advocate of what I call hybrid offsite, where you might have elements of metal wall solutions, you might have prefabricated risers, you might have offsite bathrooms, you might have a prefabricated lift, which we've done. That worked very well, sped up the time to execution. I think there's a nice blend in skills between elemental offsite and traditional onsite to get the lowest optimum cost base for a developer.
Yeah. So going back to all of this then, do you think this sort of hybrid model is a more sustainable model and also has less carbon print, print, whatever the right term is?
Yeah.
Print, yeah.
I think probably lots of studies are on this. It is definitely evidential at the moment, and obviously over the years more data will come out, that a volumetric scheme built in a factory away from site has a very good sustainability record, because generally things are wasted less, and things are brought to site, brought to the property and used once. However, there's still transport to site which needs to be factored in.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's a one size fits all, as with all these things. A developer can only be sustainable if they're going to make margin on a project. That's unfortunately the harsh reality of sustainability.
Yeah.
And many consultants will advocate sustainability, and we do, but the chief exec of a big FTSE said at one point to his shareholders, we have to be financially sustainable first. And
absolutely.
I think developers need to blend their personal ethos with their business drivers, and I think there's a nice balance to be struck. All off-site solutions ultimately are more efficient than doing it on-site, better quality. So if you really go into it, if you have better quality, you have less people coming back to site all the time and spending carbon miles driving around, throwing defective materials away. I think one of the things we do in construction really well is put a lot of rubbish into landfill. And if we can do off-site and make it better and right first time, then a lot less is going to go to landfill before we even get into the more subtle approaches of carbon miles and things such as that.
I think it's a very interesting topic, and I think there's going to be a lot more in this space, I would say, because obviously with COVID-19 and we are where we are, and I think we're going to have to look a lot more closely. Yes, financial sustainability is at the top level, but there comes some sort of responsibility as an industry on its whole, and I think that's what we're all going to have to look at some point, and I think maybe that's the way to go. Is offsite, using a bit of everything to its advantage. As you said, transport is still going to have to be there, but less wastage and all that will add up to that element.
I think there's some very interesting designers doing some interesting work in this space around flat pack, taking the IKEA approach.
Yeah.
So if you think about IKEA, they don't deliver you a ready-built wardrobe via a courier van and
Yeah.
deliver air. They deliver you an engineered piece of equipment that can be built by any skill level in your home. And I think there's a lot of positive thinking around that. Bryden Wood are one of the leaders in this, and their kit of parts scheme is really quite fascinating. If you go on to look at their website, there's lots of videos on it. And
What's the company called?
residential. The company's called Bryden Wood. They're
Bridal, B-R-D, B-R-I.
Bryden, Bryden Wood. I would pause to say they're an architect. I would almost say they're a product designer who came from being architects. They're now management consultants. They have a huge R&D factory, which is never heard of as a designer. They actually build and execute their own things before they ask customers to pay. You know, I think really interesting. You know, I've met Jamie. He's a very clever guy, very inspirational in the market.
Yeah. Sounds good. And not sure if you recently follow that IKEA either has a stake in the Top Hat, which is one of the modular construction companies, I think. So I think it's like everyone's going that way.
Top Hat are going to be IKEA's delivery agent. IKEA have a solution called Block, which they're doing, which is essentially flat pack homes. They've done it for many years in their homeland, and they've looked for a delivery vehicle in the UK, and they've partnered with Top Hat, who have got a big manufacturing facility.
Interesting.
So that's a really great way of matching a company who does manufacture their own flat pack and develop sites. And on this time, they've actually said, look, we've got the sites, we don't have capacity to build. So we're going to outsource it to Top Hat, who have capacity to manufacture, but don't have enough sites yet. So I think that's a really interesting relationship that's formed. And I think there'll be an awful lot more of that.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. So we should come to you when we are looking at those sort of options. And what would you say is the sort of optimum scheme size for this sort of, this type of arrangement, you know, off-site and traditional?
Well, I think again, if you look at the hybrid side of things, all schemes of any size can benefit from off-site, you know, prefabrication, whether that's as simple as, you know, modular wiring, for example, which is off-site, you know, de-skilling the work, to fully volumetric at the other end of it. You know, you have, you know, wooden, you know, twin walls that most developers could use even on a small build. If you're building a small steel frame, you have the Bryden Wood type steel system, which is all color coded. So, you know, you can de-skill the labor content because it is literally plug and play, albeit with large bits of steel. So they've taken a modular wiring approach and upscaled it. I think if you're looking at volumetric, you need to be, you know, 50 units in real terms to get the size
benefits.
Then I think you're going to struggle to get manufacturers interested in it because, you know, it's a couple of weeks work in their factory. So I think for SME developers, probably more focus on hybrid and engineering. I would almost say, you know, to engineer the workforce down on site, to look at prefabricated elements to simplify your designs, to make more of it manufacturable off-site and more of an assembly on site rather than having wet trades on site.
Yeah, very interesting model. And I think definitely when I have a scheme of this nature that I can look at doing, I would very much come to Amdas as my first point of call to get all the costings and see how that works. So I think we've had a very interesting sort of conversation and given people a flavor of what Amdas does and how you can get involved with that at various stages. I think we haven't touched on things like handover and stuff. Do you want to give a quick flavor of that as well to complete it all off?
Sure. I mean, one of the founding ideas of Amdas when we set up was all about residential aftercare and how when SME developers and large developers are building brands, you'll spend a huge sum of money branding, show apartments, brochures,
Yeah.
websites, try and engage and to build that trust with your buyer of your product. If you're doing a residential scheme or a senior care scheme, Amdas have a service where we effectively act as your outsourced team to deal with all of the legal completions, communications. We'll help people move in. We'll manage any issues they have. We'll do their training on the property. And for many SME developers, that's potentially very attractive because if you're not known in the market, you can say to your buyers, we employ a specialist to look after you. Don't think we take your money and then run into the distance. We've got an aftercare team. But obviously you want to keep your overhead lean, so you won't be employing those people directly. And we find that very attractive with a lot of clients. Other clients, we work as part of our in-house team. You know, they might have 1 or 2 people, and they might have hit a multiple of projects finishing. So we'll white label for them. And it's all about making sure that customer experience is great, because one bad comment on Twitter, you know, or, you know, there's, you know, Homes Review, there's many review websites now springing up, very much like TripAdvisor, which will make or break SME developers.
Yeah.
You know, it takes years to build your brand and one bad experience to kill it.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's where the aftercare comes in. So with all the manuals and you know, making sure the new occupiers are familiar with with all the functions and the
and making sure they also complete. You know, talking to them 3 months, 6 months before PC to say we're going to be completed in March. Can you send me your mortgage offer confirmation? Have you got this document? Here's the land title. You know, very much supporting your conveyancing solicitor, acting as that link between the delivery side and the legal side.
Okay, brilliant. And that's the aftercare. And then you also have the handover. Is this part of the handover?
No, it's all apartment handover and aftercare. It's all part of the same solution. But essentially, it's a shopping list of services, Manny. There's no one size fits all. We price it bespoke for each client, depending on what they want and how much they want to spend ultimately.
Brilliant. Well, I'm looking forward to working more and more with Amdas on my future projects. So really, how would people get in touch with you? Go to your website?
Go to our website, call me directly. We've got obviously a London office, so we're based in Fitzrovia. We're very central. We predominantly work M25 and the Southwest. We have a Winchester office, which covers Southampton and the South Coast. We're agile. We'll go and work for interesting clients. We're looking at a job in Weymouth. We've worked in Bristol. We've worked in Winchester. We're looking at one in Cambridge. So it really depends on the client, whether we've got an existing relationship, the size of scheme, and whether we really think we can add value, honestly, and whether the SME have got budget for us ultimately.
Yeah, and going back to the, you know, if I'm sure you're looking to build long-term relationships with SME developers. So primarily, is there a fee-based approach, or can you do fee as well as something at the back end just to help with the cash flow for the developers?
Yeah, I mean, we look at different solutions. Long-term, we want to actually co-invest part of our fee as equity. We think that's a different solution for consultants because then we're truly aligned with you. With town planning, we're happy to work on an overhead cost base with a success fee for profit. So we can't work for free. We're not that large, but
no, of course,
we'll put our margin at risk to make sure, you know, that you get your consent. And then, you know, hopefully, if, you know, like town planning consultants, once you've got the value on the site, you can pay us a bit more. So we try and work with SMEs, you know, to find
flexibility. So there's some flexibility there basically, and ideally negotiate with you and work out a win-win for all of us basically.
Absolutely. We want to grow. You know, we turn over about 1.2 million a year in fees. We want to grow that. We want to work with more and more new clients. So, you know, we want to be seen to be flexible and agile and basically have some fun and have a good relationship, you know.
Absolutely.
We want to work with people that grow.
Fantastic. So website is amdasmanagement.co.uk.
That's right. We're just relaunching next month. So that'll be quite exciting, just putting a lot of our recent projects on, a bit more about our service offer. But the existing website's still live and it gives you a good enough flavour of what we do.
Absolutely. And your email address is?
It's robert.darrow@amdasmanagement.co.uk or
Fantastic.
inquiries at Amdas Management.
Brilliant. It was so nice to talk to you, Robert. Thank you so much for your time, and hoping to get in touch with you for our next project.
Lovely, Manny. Thanks for your time.
Take care. Bye now.